Thank you for being here. This is a project in North Auckland, City to Farm, we call it. And when you go to a permaculture course, they always talk about everything you do has to have three reasons. Everything has got three purposes. So our City to Farm 3 is regenerative agriculture, building soil, zero waste. We use food scraps as a waste. And then climate action, we're increasing carbon in the soil. There's a fourth one, which is like an extra bonus. What we do is we take food scraps from kindies, cafes, schools. We then take them out to the farm and they're stored in wheelie bins. Our farmer puts the food scraps into swales and mulch on top. He's growing the bananas on the bund. The bananas that are grown, we take them back when the truck goes around to pick up, excuse me, to pick up the food scraps from the kindies. He takes the bananas back to the kindies for the kids to eat. And some of the kindies have gone out to the farm to see what's happening on the farm. So they can close that loop. So the outline, some of this, most of you have been here with Betsy's talk, right? Maybe a few. And so we've been just going to almost skim through the carbon and soil ones and the carbon sinking. And then we'll get into the City to Farm project. This is where the wheelie bins are all being stored. For up to 2 weeks or a month, we store them. And then we've been trialing different composting methods. We have the swales, Johnson Sue. Anybody using a Johnson Sue? Kind of. And then spice piles or spick piles. No, it's just because it started off being called a spick pile, but then in America, spick is something not very nice. Okay, so then they then added an E on the end. So you might find some of your stuff you find on the web might still be spick pile, but it's the same thing. So this is the quick one of our carbon cycle. The largest carbon is in the ocean, and then you have differing quantities. The soil is about second or third most grams. And that's the carbon cycle, into the ground, back up to the atmosphere. Okay, next slide. So this just kind of gives a rundown. What we want to look at here for our project is we're going to be, the interesting fact is the atmosphere is like increasing by 4.2 picograms carbon per year. Our soil is losing 1.8 picograms per year. So what we're trying to do is to take that carbon out of the atmosphere where it's increasing and put it into the soil where it's decreasing, help balance up that carbon cycle. To lower the CO2, there's 3 options: reduce energy use, low or no carbon fuel, and then to sequester CO2. So we're looking at option 3 for our project. And so to sequester CO2, there's 3 options in broad terms. Convert the CO2 into biomass soil, let's bring it back into the soil. Then there's engineering techniques and chemical transformations. So again, we're running the more natural, which is to sequester the CO2 into the soil. Yep. So one other thing about the carbon, briefly, is there's 3 broad types of carbon, depending on how long the carbon cycles in the soil. So this is like fresh bugs, microorganisms. They have what they call labile carbon. So that cycles about 1 to 5 year cycle. Then you have slow carbon that has a cycling of 20 to 40 years. And then you have the high stable carbon, and this is where we get our biochar, if you hear it the last book, and glomalin was talked about as well. So again, what we're looking at doing is trying to focus on this part, our stable, because that's what we're saying in the Amazon, it's been there for 500 more years. Okay. This is just some tests. We've done quite a lot of tests the first year or two with the master's student now. It's been 5 years, and it takes a while for this to actually happen. So we're looking at doing another round of testing this coming year, next year. There's different test methods which we're still kind of trying to research, and because one of the other things we want to be able to do is to provide the farmer with carbon credits too. So we want to get into a carbon credit scheme. Have any of you got into a carbon credit? There's a couple of, yeah. So maybe we should talk. So this is our hot water extractable. So that's our carbon, our labile carbon at the far end. So but what they're saying is that what they're thinking is, if you want to measure your carbon growth, then this one may be giving you more information on amount of that is changing, because it increases. It's got that 1 to 5 years. The 500 to 1,000 year carbon takes a lot longer to change. So this is like 0.1% per dry weight. And then we do a total carbon. Interesting, that's highly variable between the samples. But that one, we're getting up to 2 and 3% dry weight. No, this is the actual same as it was at the start. So, yep. This is kind of like some examples of what typically happens with carbon in the soil. So it's quite variable. I'm not too up on all this stuff, but you have the lower limit with change, you have the upper limit, and then what they find typical, it kind of fluctuates. This is years down along the bottom here. So and then there's the question about, how much, there's a lot of question, how much carbon you can actually put into the soil before it's kind of, this is saying here that after this amount of carbon, then you're not going to increase it. But they reckon that biochar, isn't that right? Biochar doesn't have an upper limit, kind of. Probably more than this 2.5 or 3%. And at the moment on our farm, it's around this kind of range here. Not our farm, it's our farmer's farm. This is a picture of the biochar you saw last time from Betsy. And then we're familiar with the formation of soil with time. Starts off as a rock, and then it gradually breaks down. You get this A horizon and the C horizon, and then it comes down at the bottom here. So that's just a picture of the terra preta that Betsy has been talking about, the rich, deep. This is like the normal soil. And then Betsy showed an example, going to the next slide, is what we have now. When we started off, it was like this grey stiff clay. Carbon sinking is about putting carbon. Now that's our one of handling CO2, taking carbon out of the atmosphere, storing it into the ground, as we said. The carbon is in roots, soil microorganisms, and soil fungi is the carbon. They need to breathe. They need to have, air. And then, what is carbon sinking? The human intervention to assist nature to very rapidly draw down carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the soil. So carbon sinking is what the project, that option. So the City to Farm, now we'll get into the City to Farm project. So growing topsoil, climate action, and food resilience. So it always has this like a triple benefit. So some of the benefits, the soil goes from dense to more porous. Depth of topsoil, as Betsy was talking about, increases. Higher value horticultural crops. Carbon credits, would like to go down that angle. Local food production, I guess we're all familiar with that. And then the local food production, greater local food security. So these are all kind of permaculture, good permaculture things. Okay, so what is it? We have our farm. One key aspect, you need to work with a good farmer. Betsy had a list of transition towns link when we were thinking during this project. And Richard Lee probably has a composting guy. It was he that came up with this idea of what we're doing with these swales. So yeah, Betsy put out a thing through her email list, people that are interested in having taken part in this experiment. And these farmers said, well, they were just thinking about what they could do with their land, because it was very poor quality land. And here's a farmer who has, diggers and trucks and all these things. So what we do is we go around in the truck and different size wheelie bins. And so this is a veggie place. This is when we've got Zing, that Bokashi Zing in the thing, and we either have 15-litre buckets for small quantities, or if they're taking it inside into a kitchen. Several places have it in their kitchen, and they don't really want a wheelie bin in their kitchen. So we'll go into this in more depth. Yes, yeah. Yeah, kindies, we found one of our best sources often is kindies, because they all make, the kindy makes the food for the kids' lunch. So they have all this food food leftovers, and then at a retirement village, we get the food from the retirement village. That gives us the sort of most food. And then this is at a cafe. This is our first food pickup we had 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. This is like a 3-pronged piece of card that he puts on each cafe table, which explains what? Is it flyer? Yeah. Well, this is on the actual table too, right? So he puts it on the table so the people that eat there can see what's happening to their food scraps. So these are our different bins. We have the smaller bins, 1,800-litre bins for kindies and smaller places. This is our largest one, the 140. They do get quite heavy if you go too big. We have one kindy that keeps on insisting that she fills this up to the top. That's heavy. And then this is a Henkel bin. Now because we have this Zing, this anaerobic composting first, there's a bit of uncertainty, but that seems to break down the food faster at the start. So when we empty the bucket into the swale, it changes over to aerobic composting rather than anaerobic. But that makes this first anaerobic fastens that whole process up. But you have to have it sealed. So we have taken a normal wheelie bin, and a rubber strip goes around, and then we have these straps to strap them down. In some places, like we had a fish shop, we're picking fish up for a while, and it's pretty. So this is a Henkel bin, and it has a seal inside this lid. It has a big clamp here. but these cost about twice the price of these. So we've kept some of these for those bad fruit taste down around here. Yes, yeah. We got it from Para. Yeah. Para rubber, and it stays on there for like 2 or 3 years. We have to kind of scrape them off and replace them every 2, 3, 4 years. So this is the one before, which Betsy was showing before. This is like the different examples. She had that's our 15-litre bin option. This is our wheelie bin. So we can see in here that we have some mulch on the bottom. The biochar, we've actually found it works better on top of the mulch, but either way. And so that's where all of the liquid, rather than draining out with the tube bin system, we have enough mulch in here so that this stays wet, but the food does drain out. And then we have it layers. Oh, that was fish for that one. Layers of food, and then they put their zing. They sprinkle the zing on top. So you do that, like 5, 6 times for the bin.
Is it foolproof doing that? I mean, do people do all quirky things in there that sort of go up? Or
No, well, not.
That's
But there's a big difference between bokashi composting and normal composting. The bokashi is more, but I mean, one of the biggest thing we have is knives and forks and spoons. No, just ordinary ones. It gets into the food scrap. I mean, when they're in the kitchen scraping off the food, some of the spoons and things go on as well. And then paper. Now, paper for bokashi is not recommended. We've got one cafe that really want to put the paper in the bokashi bin. So the bin is about half paper almost, and it gets spread out into the compost. So it all. Yeah.
Are you saying you don't want to?
Well, we don't encourage it, but with people do it, yeah.
Yeah, like the kiddies in the school produce so many paper towels that we can't allow them. Right, because we have some of our lunches are in brown paper bags. I'm putting in some of them. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay in the compost though, but not the bokashi. Yes, that's the one thing that an ordinary composting bin does a bit better than a bokashi. Yep. Yeah, you shouldn't encourage it. Yeah. Mm.
What was it? Some paper towels are going to have plastic in.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever's on the hopper duty has to check. And we've got this long book. If anything in there looks suspicious, it gets picked out. But it's not too bad. It's contamination lines. Yeah. Change it?
Yep. Oh, that's the same. Now, what we've got here, this is just like an overview. We've got 2 ways of emptying the bin. So we have this truck that goes around, picks up the food scrap. It's got a tail lift back. You have to have an H2 license for the truck, so we can put in like 20 to 30 bins, woody bins per day. He drives around one day a week, and then we generally put the food. It sits in here for like 2 to 4 weeks, and so once a month we then take the food from here after it's gone through its bokashi system and put it onto the farm. We can either do it by hand. Now this is a Johnson Sioux bin down here. So the Johnson Sioux, interesting, having to turn compost bins is the one kind of downside of making compost in a big bin. And so there was a husband, Johnson, and a lady, Sue, and Sue was concerned about her husband getting old and couldn't turn the compost pile. So they came up with this method of putting these pipes down through the, so you this is like a 1 meter by 1 meter around the outside. What? Yeah, right. Yeah. And then you put these vertical pipes in it, and they kind of, you have a wire loop that kind of loops around, so, and then you can just put all the food in around it, and it saves you having to turn.
Does the PVC pipe have holes in it?
Some do and some don't. It's
To the air to the bottom of the.
yes, from the bottom. So where a pallet is on the bottom, it can get in underneath and then come up through the pipes. I think it's good to put holes in there because they can't do any harm, and it helps to get the air in. We tend to leave this in for a longer time. Yep. All right. And how's it been going? Good? Yeah.
I'm not the home. Make it, but
What we've, well, the depths are like 50 to 100 depths of food scraps and mulch. Now we looked quite a lot of, we did quite a bit of research about what was the right depth of food scraps and depth of mulch, taking into the carbon to nitrogen ratio you need for a good compost. Where we are in the swales, so we'll show them more in depth, but in what we did, we were trying 100 millimeter or 200 millimeter depths of food, or 100 or 200 of mulch, or 50. So we varied the mulch from 50 to 200. And what we found, the good balance was 100 of each. So we wanted to have enough mulch on top so that it would discourage rats from getting at the food. And interesting, when we started off for the first year or so, we were getting rats, and the farmer put around some rat traps. But now in the last few years, we don't see very many rats at all. I don't know. Yeah. But anyways, it's surprising. But that ratio 1-to-1 seems to work quite well. Around this Johnson Sue, that's a wire, or it's a tube, round tube, and then this is a filter fabric that you can purchase and put the so that it keeps in the mulch and the food, but it also allows air to go through it as well.
You want to talk about the wash table?
That's here. So these are all the buckets that are emptied. The buckets are put, you can see here, actually, the buckets are along here. And then I have the good job of washing out the buckets and the bins. And then this all gets drained into this container here, and the farmer uses that on his farm in the orchards and windbreaks. So we capture all that wash water.
That dilutes.
He just spreads it out. Yeah, because it's a bit diluted because of we add a lot of water to be actually washing them, right? So it does. Yeah. Mulch. We've tried two different types of mulch. One was an aged macrocarpa shavings. So it was nice and fine. It was a nice to have as in the mulch because it was good to work with. We did toxic tests of the macrocarpa because macrocarpa is kind of like concerned about.
That's a conifer.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
The recent.
The residents antifungal and antibacterial.
That's right. That's the last one.
Yeah, well, what we were reading was after 2 or 3 years, and what we're getting is aged stuff. What they were saying that after 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
it's,
So
it's,
if you want to use,
it would be okay.
use a lot of mulch and conifer mulch,
For pathways. Yeah.
but it does eventually break down. But
Yeah.
you want to be full with topsoil.
So we've also been using the tree mulch from,
Just the arborist.
landscapers and arborists. This is what we've been. Yeah.
But a warning about this, because this is not a hot composting method. This is a cold compost or cool. So it's not going to kill noxious weeds and weed seeds.
Okay.
So you want to make sure, and of course you don't have noxious weeds and weed seeds in your food scraps. But if you have it in your mulch, you're going to make a beautiful planting bed for all kinds of noxious things. So you have to be careful what kind of mulch you get.
The Johnson Stews, we've been leaving them for like 9 months or up to a year before we actually use it. It takes longer to break down because it only gets up to 40, 50 degrees rather than getting up to 55, up to kind of 60. So there's benefits of turning it and getting the hot, but it takes more time, energy, and effort to do it. This is a more longer term option.
How does it smell?
Not too bad actually. Yeah. Perhaps in the first, perhaps in the first week or so, there could be some smells, but after that, it seems to be, yeah. Yep. It's okay. Okay, so the one would be to use, we use landscapers, arborists. They generally offer you 2 types, of fresh, what's been mulched, and aged. So we're going to get the aged mulch because it has already started to break down and it's a lot more.
Some of the Johnson food reactors, they don't put any green in it at all. It's just malt wood chip or whatnot, just carbon, nothing else.
Oh, okay. I know they have a focus on actually fungi.
Thank you.
There's quite a change, isn't there? Changing over to more fungi orientated. And so that's another reason for letting it sit for a longer time as well, so that fungi can get to grow. Yeah.
Use too.
Yeah. 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 But interesting, the bananas are more fungi. They have, like the bacteria to fungi ratio for food is about 1. For bananas, yeah. But for bananas, they're like a fungi to bacteria ratio of 3 to 1. So it's quite different from growing your veggies in the garden. So in terms of what we are making for the swales, yeah, it's the balance because the idea was to grow other plants in the swales too. But then they have a conflicting kind of a ratio. So next. So this is, maybe I'll come over here. I'll sit down here. So these are pretty busy slides. This is putting the bucket. This is another Johnson Fu option. You can get these. This is a plastic IBCs. You can often get them free, and they have a lid, so you need to cut off the lid. But you don't have to have a filter fabric around it, so forth. We've experimented with the different hole pipes going through. These ones here, because putting the pipes in vertically is a bit tricky to get, we've been trying putting them in horizontally rather than vertically, so it's a lot easier. So we've drilled holes down this along the side. You bring up the food and mulch. You put the pipes in, and then food and mulch. And this farmer here is a farmer next door to the big farmer. He's even been trying some without any pipes, and he reckons it doesn't smell too much.
But the other thing, the simple picture is using a bin lifter.
This one here. So what we're in the process of trying to make a system so that every farmer, so this system is geared towards farm scale composting rather than in the actual urban environment. So a lot of farmers often have, diggers and that type of thing. If not, the idea is that we can have some equipment that he can actually fit some of this equipment in his truck. So you can take it over to a farmer and help. So this is a bin lifter can fit inside the truck. He's got this green hopper here. You saw him on the front page. We've got some more photographs of him. That's a fast feeder. So he can feed the food into the swale by driving along. You may have recorded seeing that photograph on the front page. He drives along the edge of the swale, and he's got a conveyor belt on the bottom of the hopper. So he turns on the conveyor belt. It takes the food off the bottom and tips it in, so he just drives along the swale. We started off doing it by hand. The farmer bought that fast feeder for us. He bought the bin lifter.
Oh, we bought the bin.
We bought the bin lifter. He bought the truck for us. What else did he buy? Something else.
Well,
but anyway, he's been using it as well. And he's a farmer that likes having equipment, right? Okay. So this is our swale. This is like our main thing here. So excavate a bit and put it on the bund on the downhill side.
you have to 1 or 1.
1:10, isn't it? What's the time? 10 minutes. Okay. So this is the food, and we put the mulch on top. Self-explanatory. Next. So we had two options. We either had these swales, so we have our biochar along on the bottom. Within the wheelie bins we put the biochar in there. So the food scraps had already come with its biochar, and it helps to inoculate the biochar in the food scraps. So we have 100 millimeters mulch on the bottom, and then 100 of these are food scraps, and we put the mulch on top, and we keep on we're leaving it for a month or 2 or 3. Our first swale A, has now had about 1.4 meters worth of food and mulch on it, and it's still only this 300 depth. So you just keep on adding it on. And then there's this trench method that we can do. Because each layer of food scraps that comes in has got biochar in it. Yes. No, that's the zinc. They put the zinc each time. So the cafe puts a layer of food scraps and then a layer of zinc. The biochar is added. We add that with the first layer of mulch. So at that bin area, when we've washed out the bins, we put a layer of mulch and a layer of biochar in the bottom of the bin, and that goes out to the shop.
When you've got biochar in your bokashi,
Yep.
take the bokashi out of the farm, are you putting more biochar in your swale,
We just add it on the base of the pile, on the base of the swale.
Well,
But we don't add any
No,
more.
it's below how deep is it?
Oh, here,
Yeah,
it was about 50 mil deep.
okay. And then you first lot of Bakashi on it,
On the mulch first,
mulch,
and then the first layer of Bakashi.
and then mulch, yeah, and then you just keep repeating that.
Yep.
And then the worms are going up through it, getting the biochar, taking it down, moving it around.
seems to be.
On the next one, so this is it here, right? So we dig the swale, make the bund. We put the biochar at the bottom, food scraps. There's a mulch layer there as well, and then the mulch on top. Then that, as it settles and breaks down, and then let's say it soaks into the ground, into the soil.
But the other thing that it shows is, seems as though topsoil is forming spontaneously underneath that biochar layer. Because when we dug holes, which is the terra preta idea, so when we dug holes through what should have been the bottom of the swale, we're getting topsoil, and we're getting very high carbon.
There'll be your deep worms and your fungus.
It's like kind of circulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But have you looked at how far down below your biochar layer? How far down is that topsoil forming?
We're gonna
Well-
find out, and then just in the next month, we're gonna, if the farmer's gonna get his digger, we're gonna dig some cross section
Right.
across the entire.
What we have done, do you want to go forward to those infiltration tests? We've done some testing. Oh, that is what it looks like now. We can just skim. No, no.
way.
You've gone to the start now. So that's what it's like now. 2024. We've got 5 rows of bananas, about 50 meters long. And then this is when we started off. This is our first bit of mulch and food scraps. Okay, next. And we started off just having a trailer. But the farmer could see that we were kind of struggling. Next. You've seen it before. This is when the first got like this is our biochar going into the bottom. We've been digging these on contour, the good permaculture method, but what the farmers found is that the water sits in there, it gets so wet between the swales. It used to be so dry that he can't get his tractor along there in the winter. He also found downstream from here where he is, there's a stream. Before it used to dry out in the summer. Now it doesn't, because all the water's going into the ground, right? Okay, next. There's our tractor guy. This is the fast feeder. You can hear this conveyor belt into the swale. Next. That's moving on a bit further. You can see that fast feeder again. There's 2 swales in there. Okay.
Sorry, can I just?
Oh, yeah.
You put the banana on the top of the swale.
Good question. Good question. Now, the first one we did, we put the banana plant on the downhill side of the bund, thinking that the water or the nutrients would infiltrate through the bund. It didn't. So then we put them almost in the mulch and food stress, but it got too hot. So it's like on that edge. It's still in the bund, but it's on the uphill edge of the bund. And this is planting the banana plants. Yep. You've seen this one before with Betsy's thing. We've got these 4 types of composting. Bakashi. Hot is not really hot. Well, I would say it was more like warm. It's around 40, 50 is the top. Whereas in the actual winter, it's quite a bit cooler than in the summer, of course. Black soldier fly, we don't get very many of them now, but
What are we doing?
some in the
January.
heat of summer and in the worms. Yep. That's our nitrogen carbon. Yep. That's ground cover. Interesting, ground cover. Next one. Our farmers Kaikuyu is the bane in the, it's like what they found. Next one, we have it here. Pie melons. You heard of pie melons? We were trying nasturtiums, but it's quite these pie melons, they're huge things. You can't really eat them. But in terms of they have a real great ground cover. It's easier to be pulling them out as well. So
Shade.
yeah, as long as you get we tried using old carpet, but that always leaves. There's always something left, So they've been experimenting with pie melon. Comfrey, yeah. Although we also want to be able to put the mulch on top as well again, so we have to keep on building it up. And with all this stuff here, you can pretty much put the food scraps and mulch on top of it, and it just becomes part of the composting system. Tell me if I'm going too fast. Pups coming up, manage them. We used an irrigation, well, the farmer put in an irrigation system in the first year, 2, but now we don't seem to need to use it. No.
In fact, in that 2020, when we had that really bad drought, and we didn't have any water for the bananas, and they did, which says something about this increased storage water capacity in the soil and in the soil.
Okay, next. Now here's what we did do to monitor the composting process. We measured up here temperature with time, and down here was a compost scale we used from a scale of 1 to 4 in terms of how much food was still. And so this is summer, breaks down 6 weeks, but in the winter it takes about 9-10 weeks for it to break down. And the same with our temperatures. See, in the winter, this is 20 to 30 degrees temperature. And so this is our 40 to 50 in the summer. So it operates more like a worm farm than a compost, because you don't have that mass to get that heat in the compost, because they're only in layers of 100 thick. That's our fungi. Yep. That's we're in a rural area, so you have to be aware of how many. Often councils have how many cubic meters you can have on your property. Over 100 cubic meters, you have to have consents and all this kind of stuff. So the idea is to work with farmers and keep, they would want to keep it underneath that 100 cubic meters, so they don't have to go through all the consenting process. Oh,
What we're saying is we are creating soil. This is in situ soil formation. So we have obviously gone through far more than 100 cubic meters of stuff, but we're turning it into topsoil.
okay. I think we're out of time. Just that. 250 tons so far. Next.
We don't know. We need to do that cross section. We need to do that ditch across.
Okay. We've just been doing some testing in terms of infiltration rates and penetration rates. And we're getting a lot higher infiltration under the swale compared to the pasture next door. And he's a fan of horses. He's a big horse fan. Okay, next. I think we've skimmed through. I don't think it's okay.
But what David's found is the infiltration rate is increased 25 to 35.
Then we did some plant growth tests as well. That's always quite useful. Some of them, see, these are some way up here, and others are down here. So we're okay. Next. Oh, this is our other farmer. Yeah. Next. Johnson Sue with the pipes through the bottom. For instance, too, with the pipes up the top, this is in his thing, store them and work them. So rather than using heavy equipment, this farmer's doing it by hand, almost. Okay, and that's our spice pile, which is long piles with plastic on top.